Hey, it's Jeff Cannata with another NLB mini. This time we're talking comics. This Wednesday, Comic Book Day, saw the release of two really interesting, buzzed about, pretty exciting books that I've been reading. Very tonally different. It's kind of odd that I'm sticking these two together, but they came out on the same day, and I want to talk about both of them. The first is Ms. Marvel #2 from Marvel Comics, the reboot of Captain Marvel, Ms. Marvel. It got a lot of buzz when it was first announced way back in November because this was going to be a Muslim Captain Marvel, a new female young girl gets the powers of Captain Marvel, and Marvel made big news by saying it was going to be this Muslim girl. And the first issue, true to the hype, came out, featured her family. Very interesting, authentic portrayal of that culture, that family. That they're very religious. At least the brother is very religious. Fantastic art in this book. But as is the case with modern comics these days, we didn't get tons happening in that first issue. I think the second issue that just came out this week is where the real payoff or the real juicy stuff starts happening, because the girl gets her powers. We get some Captain Marvel powers, and she's got new powers. These are different. We have yet to see her fly, although she makes reference to being able to. But what we do see is her shape-shifting, making her body parts bigger, and her whole body get tiny and then large, and a giant hand scoops somebody out of the water. I guess that's a spoiler, but it's not really, because what's really special about this book isn't the what happens, it's the how we feel about what happens, and that really is the experience of this young girl. This feels like old Spider-Man. This feels like what Bendis did with Ultimate Spider-Man, really making it relatable. Every kid that's ever been in high school that's felt like they didn't belong, like a misfit, which is really what comic books are. They were my salvation as a nerdy kid in those years when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I was a nerd for a long time, and still am, proudly. But the comic books were my respite from that, were my salvation, were the place I went to feel empowered, or at least to read stories about kids who were empowered, and you could live vicariously through them and have those those power fantasies play out. Well, here we have a young girl who is in a minority household. They are immigrants. They haven't been in the country for a long time. There's a lot already in the first two issues about the parents not really knowing how to raise a modern American young girl. She wants to have more freedom. She wants to be out having fun with her friends, and her family's traditions are much more limiting in that way, and much more conservative. And I think these are wonderful comic book tropes. These are the things that make great heroes, and I love that about this book. As I said, I'm loving the art as well. It's a gorgeous book. My only gripe, if there is one, is the pace. Again, the second issue, not tons happened. We kind of are getting the ball rolling. We're getting the train moving. I think this is definitely one of those books that is going to feel right when you read it in a trade paperback format, where you have multiple issues, or at least a full story arc combined into one bookshelf format. But I would recommend anybody that's even curious about this book. It's pretty fun. The shape-shifting power has never been my favorite. I always think about the difference between Plastic Man on the DC side and Mr. Fantastic on the Marvel side. I always felt like Marvel did right by Mr. Fantastic, that even though he was malleable and his body could be any kind of form, they didn't go the Plastic Man route. They didn't make him look like a silly thing. They didn't just enlarge parts for strange purposes. It always felt like Mr. Fantastic needed to get across the room. He stretched to get across the room. There was an elegance to it. And it wasn't just like, we can draw this in any form, so let's draw it in any form. And I fear a little bit that Captain Marvel, it feels a little wonky with her giant hand. And I get that she's just learning her powers and figuring it all out, but there was a little bit of that in this issue. Not enough to turn me off to it, but it was a little odd. So, transitioning from that book, which I really enjoy, and is really an interesting step forward for Marvel in a lot of interesting ways, to an Image book that also came out this week, issue 5, we've been waiting for, of what I considered to be my new comic book of 2013, which was Sex Criminals by Matt Fraction. It's an Image book. It is definitely for adults. I mean, it's right there in the title. This is a very M-rated book, whereas Ms. Marvel, of course, great for, 12, 13-year-old girls especially. Sex Criminals for adults. It's the story of two people who discover that anytime they have an orgasm, they can stop time, and they decide they're going to rob a bank. And the S is definitely hitting the F by this point in issue 5. We've been introduced to sex police that are kind of on their tail. I'm still really enjoying this book, even if it has gotten into a little bit of the farcical, cartoony side. I really loved the first issue especially because it felt really grounded in reality, and it talked about sexuality in an honest and interesting and really bold way, I think. And, there's been a bit of, it's okay. Matt Fraction's Matt Fraction, right? He's a brilliant guy, but he's also given to, sort of base jokes. And I get that, and I dig some of the humor in this book as well. I just wish there was a little less of that and a little more of the sort of honesty stuff. And the honesty stuff comes through in humor as well. It's a really good book, but now we're into real superhero tropes and costumes and secret identities and stuff like that, and that's cool. I love comics and I love those tropes, but I think it betrays a little of that honesty that the book started out with. Still really digging it, really digging the art, really digging the storytelling. As a contrast to Ms. Marvel, which this book does on a number of levels, there is a lot more story that happens per issue, which is great because these guys are taking another couple of months off before the next, well, probably not off, but we're going to get a delay again before issue 6 comes out. So it's great that there's so much here to read now, and you really get a progression of what's happening in our present, as well as lots of flashbacks and fleshing out characters, our main characters, our side characters, finding out story as he has done in each issue, showing you what's happening now and filling in backstory and their relationship and even before their relationship. It's a lot to like in that book. It's funny. It's fun. It's a great concept. It's, full of raunch, if that tickles your fancy, and it's a fun book. So both of those came out this Wednesday at your local comic book store, also on digital. You can check them out on your iPads and Android devices, and I recommend both of them. So that does it for this week. We'll see you next week on NLB Minis. Don't forget to like us, subscribe to my channel for more of these. You're going to get a lot more in the coming weeks. Thanks.